So when I posted yesterday's video, a link to it on Twitter, Matt Curtis asked, it would be cool of you to talk about your relationship to writing and how you're hoping switching to this format might help. And this is a perfectly good and reasonable question, something that I need to mention beforehand, because the next thing I'm going to say is that my immediate emotional reaction to this question is, fuck you, you're not the boss of me. And with apologies to Matt. And the reason I mentioned this is not because I think Matt did anything wrong by asking it, but because I think it's actually part of the answer to this question, which is that this is very much a reaction that comes from what happens when people say things like this to me about my writing, which to a degree is not an unreasonable thing for them to do as well. But let me tell you about a little bit of how it feels personally, which is um, every time I post something, not every time I post something, but many times when I post something, and it feels like every time, I will inevitably get at least one, often both of two comments. One of which is the author takes too long to get to the point, and the other of which is I personally lack the context for reading this piece without having to look things up on Wikipedia. How dare the author not explain this to me? And um, and also like, why didn't you go into this detail? Why didn't you go into that detail? And so it feels very much like the experience of writing on the internet is about being invited by a whole bunch of people to tell you how to do your job. And um, I mean, that's also the experience of doing many other things on the internet. But I find it particularly aggravating with writing because essentially what they are saying is that I wish you had spent many more hours on doing the thing that I wanted you to do, and instead of the thing that you gave me for free. And sometimes that's fine, and sometimes I'm just very much not in the mood to deal with it. And people get either ignored or shouted at, depending on that. But the reason I bring this up is that one of the central experiences of writing is it's just a lot of work. Um, and it's very easy to ask things of you, the writer, then not realize that um, what you're asking for is hours of work minimum, possibly days if it needs to sort of go away and think about it, need to do a bunch of reading. And so, very much what you are producing is the art, like the thing that you could have produced at the time, or the thing that you wanted to produce. And the difference between this and the thing that someone else wanted you to produce is often far more work than they realize, which is a bit meandering off the point. But part of what is nice about these is that it is just a 5 minute of me rambling about whatever comes into my head. And so it lacks the cohesiveness of having to write a piece producing a significant point. And and is just like it lowers the quality bar to the point where this is just something I can produce. By its nature, it takes exactly 5 minutes of time, and it's not even particularly focused time. And so this is something that I can essentially use to get ideas out of my head without any of the responsibilities or work of writing. Uh, One thing I do want to say is that I'm very much not switching to this format. I intend to resume writing long before I stop producing these videos. Um, it's not writing serves a completely different function for these, but this is essentially a good way for me to scratch my communicating about ideas itch and to sort of get me out of a bit of a creative rut, without having to essentially climb the giant hill of resuming writing. I do intend to resume writing within the next week or two, though. It's just that the move to the new flat has taken quite a lot out of me. And so maintaining focus for about the 5 minutes that it takes to produce a video is an awful lot easier than maintaining focus for the hour to 2 hours, 3 hours that it would take to produce a more involved piece of writing. And this sort of continues the habit I previously used of doing daily writing in order to try and unblock a bunch of ideas, but instead it's producing 5-minute videos. Speaking of which, that was 5 minutes. So I will see you in the next video.